everybody. It's me, Sasha. It's Tuesday, and that means we're here for another chat. Today, it'll be Star Wars, because Star Wars won on Twitter. Yay, everybody loves a Star War. So, to begin, we all know what Star Wars is. We all have our various opinions. We like what we like about it, and we don't like what we don't like about it. So, that said, I will be doing this entire stream with the caveat that I am not here to convince you of anything, or into anything, or out of anything. We all have our own favorite movies, our own favorite characters, our own favorite storylines. And I respect that. So, I would very much request that you do take anything I say with a grain of salt if you don't like it or approve of it. And yeah, I'm just here to talk about what I like about it. So yeah, nothing is an insult. This is all my opinion. So yeah, as the saying goes that I picked up somewhere on the internet, nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. And as a Star Wars fan, I can't find anything to disagree about that. So yeah. Hello. It is me, Sasha, your favorite Dungeon Lounge Griffin. And yeah. Let us do a Star Wars today. So, one of the things that I really love about Star Wars, and our first subject, is Mandos, or Mandalorians. You might notice my good buddy Jango Fett standing right beside me. Just look at that beautiful armor, beautiful helmet. I love it. I'm a huge fan of the Mandalorian design. Of course, it was Boba Fett's armor that drew me in right away, of course. But then came along Jango Fett, and then all the other Mandos from the expanded universe. And this was back when the expanded universe was running amok and doing its own thing. And there's a whole lot of story built up about them. Hi, Riot Car. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm here to do a Star Wars today. And yeah. I hope you're doing well, Riot Car. Thanks for joining. Oh, the chat. Where'd the chat go? Where's the chat? Why is there no chat thing? I don't know where that went. One moment. There we go. There we go. All right. Fixed, I think. There we go. All right. There's that scuff today. All right, so back to Mandalorians. I mean, just look at that helmet. Just look at it. It's such a great helmet. It's mysterious. It's badass. There's a T-visor. You can't see the face. When they talk, you hear it through a speaker. Like, everybody says Boba Fett is overrated, but I don't think so. I mean, the new series that they did about Boba Fett is like, to me, just only reinforced how awesome he is. But I get why people think, he went out like a bitch. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Hit by a blind man, fell into the thingy. Like, I get it. But I always thought he was cool. The design, the way he just sort of stood there lurking in the background, hands clasped over his gun, like he was just ready to go. He was ready to shoot anything, to take anybody in. It was awesome. And and then they just made a whole bunch more Mandalorians. And I just thought that was really cool because they all had different designs, and then they expanded on the story, and it was just really cool. Like you get characters like Boba Fett, Jango Fett, uh, Bo-Katan, um, all of the new ones. Uh, just there's so much to go with, and Mandalorians have a great like culture. Like I've never known if this was official or not, but the colors on their armor mean things. Like I don't know if that was fan derived or not, but in any case, I always thought it was really cool. Like blue means reliability and so on, and red means vengeance and all of that. Like the idea that you could communicate so much about yourself just by the look and design of your armor, and those who know, and those who don't don't. And they're just such an insular culture because everyone tried to take them out because they were just so badass at what they did. And it's like an entire culture of bounty hunters. Like they, the way that Mandalorians do family, you don't necessarily have to be related by blood. You can, you just speak a phrase, really mean it, and you're married or you're adopted or you're comrades, and that's just really cool. Like it speaks to inclusivity. Like they don't care where you're from or what you did or any of that. They if you prove yourself as a person, you support them. Hi Flora, yay. Well, you're currently watching a Star Wars, or at least an attempt at one. um and yeah, uh like if nothing else, Mandalorians are like superb family, superb parents because they just instill in their kids from a very young age a love and a respect and a culture, and it's just so cool to me. Like family family is usually, made fun of, like with Vin Diesel. It's like, oh, I don't need anything else. I have my family. And it's like, but with Mandalorians, your entire family is also there with a blaster and ready to blast whoever is going against you. And like they're just ready to go. And that's part of being a Mandalorian. Uh, you barely trust anybody except your own family. Nobody else means anything unless they join your family. So, uh, you know, Mandalorians are very much you do you, but I will shoot you if you look at me wrong. And my helmet will tell you if you have a blaster on you. Like, and then they form their own like clans, um, with all of their own traditions and such. They have their own language, um, and it's just such a neat thing. Like they keep a grudge, and if you're their friend, they will fight to the death for you. Tradition means everything, as seen in The Mandalorian. Now, granted, we all know he was raised by an extremist group, with the whole like don't never take off your helmet thing, never let anybody see you thing. Um, but like even then, like they took the idea of the Mandalorian culture to the extreme, and just such tradition, such respect. It's like it's really cool to see in what is ostensibly a space opera slash sci-fi type dealy like Star Wars. Um, the way their armor um, frames their body, protects them, the little diamond in the middle of the chest. Um, I love that. And the variations, the individuality within each Mando's armor while still following the guideline of how to be a Mandalorian. And some have jetpacks and some don't. And their gauntlets may or may not have weapons or other utility tools. Um, like, that's just so neat. And they have a very, very long history. Um, like, people tried to kill them, get rid of them, occupy them. Some of them joined the Empire. Um, some of them fought each other. Some of them moved to their planet's moon. Like, they all have very slick spaceships. Like, it's just such an individuality. And it's lent itself to cosplay as well. Like, there is a whole cosplay group, kind of like a sister group of the 501st and the Rebel Legions called the Mandalorian Mercs. And if you like the Mandalorian design enough to want to make your own, you can totally join them and help raise money for charity and still look like a badass space bounty hunter in really cool armor. And I love that. I love it. I just think Mandos are just coolness epitomized. They just, like, if you see a Mandalorian walking towards you in full armor with the blaster out, you know they mean business. And I like that. It speaks very strongly. And so, we move on to clones. Clone troopers, who I also love very much. Clone troopers were cloned from Jango Fett. Their helmet designs derived of the Mandalorian. They have a partial T-visor. The armor expanded to fit more of their bodies. They were taught in the Mandalorian way, at least depending on whichever books you read or fiction you consume. They were a really arguably good army. The Grand Army of the Republic. When it all came about through shady means. But hi, Kishinam. Welcome. Today we're seeing a Star War, or talking about a Star War. I hope you're doing well. Yes, we are talking Star Wars today. I'm talking about what I like about Star Wars. And we just finished The Mandalorians. I love Mandalorians. I think they're very cool. And now we're moving on to Clone Troopers. Pictured here is Fives, one of my favorite clones. He's awesome. If you watch the Clone Wars, yes. Me too, Kishinam. Me too. Yes. And that's one thing I love about the clone troopers, their names, their individuality. Despite the fact that they're clones, they each had their own character, their own names, and their own desires in life. And one of my favorite book series, the Republic Commandos, the clone, there were several clones, and they each got their own life stories and their own desires. One of them ends up marrying a Jedi and having a kid, and oh, okay, so yes, it might be good to explain it. My apologies for it. So clones are all clones of Jango Fett. There was an alien species that excelled in cloning science, and basically what they did was they took Jango Fett's genes as a source, and they just started cloning him. And so every clone under that helmet looks like what Jango Fett looks like under his helmet. They all were Temeraire Morrison. Um, and so, yeah, he was chosen because he was basically like a guy in his prime, well well suited to combat. Yes, yes. Although as I understand it, Temuera Morrison did come back to do voices sometimes, but also in the Clone Wars there was other voice actors doing it as well. But they were so good you can't really tell. um, and yeah, so the whole premise, of course, was to get a really, really big army really fast so that they could fight the Separatists, which, as we all know, was all manipulated by Palpsy Boy. And it was all a fake war, but nobody knew that until actually one of the clones figured it out. And Fives was also the clone who figured out that they all had a little device in their heads that, or not device, more like, well, kind of a half biological device that, when they were given Order 66, would force them to turn on all their Jedi overlords. Biochips, that's the word, yes. And it kind of drove Fives mad. He wasn't very happy with that. He tried to convince the other clones, but only a couple of them really believed him. And unfortunately, he got cornered and killed because of it. But he was awesome. Like that's the reason Fives is one of my favorite clones. He was so strong and awesome. And he just stood up for his fellow clones. He was the man. He figured it out because he was smart, and clones were bred to be smart. Hi, Alosin. Welcome. We're doing a Star War today. Hopefully it turns out to be interesting. This is just one Griffin's opinion on things, of course. I am not setting out to convince anybody otherwise of their own already set opinions, but I love me a Star War. And as you can tell by the helmet, clones were the predecessors to stormtroopers, but we're not planning on talking about those today. Maybe we might. I don't know. But yeah, so within the clones was a culture of sacrifice, brotherhood, family, respect. One of my favorite episodes of the Clone Wars was when they went back to the cloning facility and they met a clone that turned out to be yes, they do. They do have surgical precision. And I've seen many arguments that clones were the better army than stormtroopers. And I think that can be very easily justified because of the technology they use. Like they basically flash installed how to fight and how to strategize and how to analyze in their heads. And the clone commandos were especially good at that. Their training all emphasized all of the strategizing and the planning. I do think more of the clones probably should have not listened to Jedi so much because the Jedi, they were warriors, but they weren't really generals. And when they were installed as generals to the clones, I don't think it really worked out too well. The Jedi never really knew how to properly utilize their clones. And there's at least one episode where the clones basically rebelled against their general, who treated them like crap, who viewed them as disposable. And I thought it was good that they did that. And eventually Anakin and good old what's her name, his Padawan drop by and are like, hey, maybe you should treat your clones a bit better. And the general was like, no, they're tools, nothing more. Meanwhile, all the clones are like plotting the general's death behind his back. It's pretty, it's pretty great. And that just shows like the kind of individuality they had, because some clones were extremely loyal to the point of following every order, no questions. Ahsoka, that's her name. Thank you. Um, Following every order with no questioning, and others were like, uh, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. I don't think that's very smart because of this. Maybe we should do that instead." And quite often, if the general was smart, they would listen to their clone because the clones knew what they were doing. They were soldiers par excellence, and I just thought that was really cool. And they did stuff in their spare time when they weren't fighting. They took care of their armor. They tried out new weapons. They plotted strategies. They solved logistics. Like, they did everything. They were multifunctional tools, even if their primary function was fighting. And I think Star Wars handled the clones very well. Maybe not the movie so much, but in the Clone Wars TV series. Yeah, exactly, Alosin, exactly. And yeah, like if a general didn't listen to their clones, um, quite often bad things would happen. They might win, but they would do it in the most clumsiest fashion, because all that Jedi really knew how to do was charge in head first, and damn the torpedoes full speed ahead, and not really the smartest of plans, really. Like, Jedi were good for being Jedi, not for being generals. And that was like a severe misstep. Like, occasionally you got lucky with a general like Anakin, you know, who kind of half knew what he was doing, and Obi-Wan, maybe not as good a general as Anakin, but they both were competent at least. But like a lot of Jedi, there was no qualification for being a Jedi general. You were just there because you were a Jedi. And it's like, okay, it's great that you have a lightsaber and you can throw things around with your mind, but that's not going to help here when we have to sneak around and try to outmaneuver our enemy. Like, just let the clones handle this. You sit back in your chair and sip a martini. The clones will take care of this, and then you can claim victory. Like, why not? But of course, I guess the Jedi had to be seen as figureheads and leaders, and hence you got a whole bunch of unqualified Jedi not really knowing what they're doing, but trying their best. And some of them were okay. Yeah, exactly, Kishnam, exactly. You're a clone, flash grown. You, you know all these strategies. You know how to take down a man with a pencil, and then here comes this literal kid with a glow stick telling you what to do, and you're supposed to follow all their orders and give them all the same respect that you give a fellow clone. And it's like, what? Like, what? Like, no, that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. Like, you get like 12-year-olds telling you what to do when you're a fully grown clone who, yeah. I imagine many clones must have been secretly frustrated. They must have, like, been, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I dying for this kid who doesn't know what they're talking about? And, like, it's weird. It's just weird. like who in their right mind would sanction this kind of arrangement? And yet the clones not only persevered but succeeded. And that's because they were just so well built. They were really good at what they did. And they were just very compelling because they each had their own story, their own identity, and their own desires and goals in life. Some of them just wanted to blow things up. Um, if you watched The Bad Batch, uh, those were clones, but they turned out differently for whatever reason, and they each had their own specialty. They were called the Bad Batch, but they were actually experts at what they did, and I thought that was really cool that they expanded on it. There was so much demand for more clone stories that they came up with a whole new group of them, the Bad Batch, which I highly recommend because it's pretty awesome. Like the clones are all neat characters, and you get one that stays with the Empire, and the other ones run away because they feel what they're doing is wrong. And yeah, like it's just really cool. It's and of course, like the armor design, like what you're seeing here is within the cosplay world called realistic, which is actually the kind of clone armor that I've been attempting to build for a while, and it is like really cool. And it covers everything, and I believe Fives was an ARC trooper, which was even more specialized trooper. He was designed to lead and to be a commander, and so hence why his armor had those unique markings. And there was a whole bunch of clone commanders who all specialized in something or other. And yeah, like just there was a lot of characters, and they all had names, and they all had stories. And I'm sorry, I'm not doing as well as I thought I would this time. Aw, well, thank you. I'm trying my best. um, Another thing I really like about the clones is that they took the idea of a comma from the Mandalorians, which is the skirt, the battle skirt that Aw, thank you, Flora. Yeah, I'm nervous and I'm tired, so my apologies for any like stuttering or anything. Um, and they took the idea of a battle skirt and adapted it for clone use, and some of the clone commanders uh, really personalized it for themselves, and you got like reds and blues and greens. Um, Sometimes clone battalions would have their own markings, like you had like the 327th Star Battalion and the 501st Legion. Um, Aw, thank you, Ryaskar. Uh, yes, they are badass, Elosin. They really are. I love them. Um, which is like why my own personal Mandalorian, which is still in development, ostensibly, hoping to finish it at some point. Um, but it's been a long time. But aw, thank you.
Cute.
They are cute. Yes. Um, my own personal Mandalorian design is I wanted to go with a Boba Fett helmet, and I'm using blue and yellow for Ukrainian colors because I'm of Ukrainian descent. My own air quote family crest is the Ukrainian trident, which I think is pretty cool. Um, and yeah, I have no idea when it'll be done. I've been working on it for way too long, and it just hasn't come together for so many reasons, but I'm really proud of it. As for my clone trooper, I'm doing a generic realistic grunt, so like one of the grunts from the movies. Um, uh, and so it'll be like Fives here, but without the trauma plate at the front or the shoulder things, the shoulder pads he has. Um, and no comma. I'll just be a plain white grunt. But yeah. Um, yes. So yeah, I'm gonna move on to my next subject. Um, and let's see how long I can ramble about the rebellion. I love the rebellion. I have so much love for the rebellion because Well, you have Princess Leia over here, and she's really cool. Thank you. Thank you. Princess Leia has always been an inspiration to me. She took charge of her own rescue, and like, she's no like, she's no maiden. She doesn't, you know, she probably could have escaped herself if she'd had the time. Um, but instead, she helped her own escape. She was a princess, but she was raised a politician, and she excelled in everything she did. Um, she uh, she knew several languages. She had lots of friends. Um, she joined the rebellion like right away. She couldn't um, tolerate the thought of being in the Empire. Um, she she even learned how to fight. I believe there's some new expanded canon being introduced where she actually trained as a Jedi as well with Luke at some point. Honestly, don't ask me when. I'm a bit confused about the timeline myself, but I'm no expert. um, but like she was just so strong. She didn't take anybody's guff. She might have been like her and Mon Mothma were like maybe the only two women for at least the trilogy that were present and in the lead. Um, there were others, but they were barely there. Um, she uh, she knew how to be a leader, and that really served the rebellion. They were inspired uh, because she had held absolute faith in her fellow rebellion members, in the ideals and the desires for freedom. Um, she she told everybody what they needed to hear. She was compassionate about the troubles in the universe. Um, she had real character. She was funny. Uh, she even dated Han Solo, like, and married him and had kids, or a kid. Um, I, uh, I personally was not too fond of what they did with Ben Solo and Kylo Ren, but unfortunately we're stuck with it. But that being said, um, she tried her best. She, the only reason she sent her kids off in both the EU, the expanded universe pre Disney acquisition, and the new uh, current canon, is because she wanted her kids to be trained. She wanted them to not become um, chaotic force users who didn't know what they were doing and couldn't control their own power. Um, she sent them off so that she could also lead the rebellion. Um, she she did her best to negotiate peace, to uh, escape whatever the Empire threw at her and her fellow uh, rebellion companions. Um, they just wanted everybody to be free, and she fought for that. She led the way. She uh, she carved a path. She figured out what was smart to do. Um, and she just was the best, really. Exactly, freedom. She cared so much about freedom that she essentially gave the entirety of her life to making sure that others had it. When she was even still a senator, she she fought for rights. She fought for understanding. She tried to teach others about the value of compassion, about the value of love, um, and how love can often save the day, or keep people strong. Um, she taught about the value of strategy, um, keeping your cards close to your chest, um, being educated so that you knew what you were talking about and couldn't be manipulated. She knew all of this. She knew how to, she was adept at navigating a system that was designed to suppress freedom and freedom of thought and action. Um, the the um, the Senate was being so easily manipulated, and it seemed like she was the only one who noticed it a lot of the time. She tried to tell others, but nobody listened, and because of that, a whole bunch of things fell. The the uh, the Republic fell and became the Empire, taken over by the Emperor and his guard dog, Darth Vader. But if people had just listened to Leia and her fellows, if people had just took their lessons to heart, things would have been so much better. But they didn't, and everything happened the way it did. But it gave her a chance to shine as a both an extremely competent politician and as a battlefield leader. She was somebody who knew how to hit people where it hurt. And because of that, she was greatly admired, greatly respected. She knew what to do and how to do it. And that to me is worthy. She was a worthy character. She had to fight her way to where she got, and she maintained it the whole way. Maybe she might not have been the best mother, even though she tried her best. But nobody's perfect, and something had to give. And if you're a revolutionary leader, unfortunately, your personal life's going to suffer for it. So, yeah, that's what the Empire had to deal with. She was as fierce as you could get. She, you could arguably say she got it from her dad. She believed, even in the thick of it, that everybody deserved that compassion and respect, and at least a chance. And that's one of the things that's really great about her. I thought she was a great character, something to admire, someone to learn from. And I took a lot of inspiration from her as I grew up, as a young Griffin. She taught me to stand up for myself, to not take anybody's guff, or at least try not to. And so even in real life, she was inspirational. She was a hero as much as any other hero in Star Wars is. She taught me a lot. And along with the other main Star Wars heroes, of course, we can't skip over Luke. Luke Skywalker, Leia's brother, Jedi. He was an inspiration too. He was a leader as much as his sister, although his leadership was mainly based in the Force. But where Leia taught others to rely on themselves and their families for freedom, Luke believed very much in the Force and the lessons that taught. He wanted to become the best Jedi so he could save his family and save the universe, or the galaxy anyway. And so where Leia led from the front with her diplomacy and her intelligence, Luke led with his lightsaber and his wisdom. And it was very much a trait that he shared with his sister. They were both wise and experienced, but in different ways. Where Leia was a political machine, where she knew how to maneuver ins and outs of politics, Luke led from the battlefield. Luke taught others how to control their impulses, how to be a fighter and a warrior, but as well with compassion. Um, Luke never wanted to hurt somebody. He only did it if he had to. And I think that was as much himself as it was his Jedi experience. Um, he used the Force to help others. He used the Force to benefit others more than himself, I would say. Um, Luke tried to minimize battle damage as much as he could. He didn't want to kill people. He just wanted to create peace. Unfortunately, sometimes creating peace means going to war. So you get the Star Wars. Um, he was a very able pilot. He could maneuver with the best of them. Um, I would say he got that from his dad. I guess it runs in the family. Um, he, let's see, what can I say? Luke fought alongside his sister. He learned how to do the politics too. Wow, I'm really sorry, guys. I totally I'm a bit off balance right now. Trying my best. Let's see. And both Luke and Leia were extremely competent in what they did. They were like a power family. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'm just... Thank you. Thank you. They both just wanted a free universe. Which was something that anybody can relate to. They wanted people to be able to live their lives how they lived them. They wanted to try to mop things up as best they could. They believed in freedom and in fighting for it, but they wanted as little damage as possible. And that's why they were good leaders. No leader wants to fight. No good leader wants to fight anyway. War should always be a last resort, and that's what they strived for. Luke believed in being surgical with his actions, just going in, taking out the exact threat, and then going out again. Anybody he encountered along the way, he would try to get them out of the way. I mean, one could arguably say that blowing up the Death Star was, well, all of the Death Stars, both of them, and then the new one in the new movies, but I don't know. That was like probably the biggest act of war they did. And that was only out of necessity because it could just, the Death Stars could blow up a planet. So you kind of needed to get rid of that. You needed to make it as safe as possible, the galaxy. And there's no easy way to do that when there's a big not moon going around blowing things up, or even the threat of it. It's very hard to believe in peace when, your planet could literally be blown up with no warning. Exactly, that's no moon. So, yes, well done, Flora. I'm proud of you. You did a thing. That's no moon. That's the Death Star. And, so how can you achieve peace when you have a big spaceship the size of a moon going around blowing things up at will. Well, unfortunately, you have to take it out. It's not their fault that it was just so big and so powerful. And the fact that Spess boat. Yes, a Spess boat. A boat in space. Exactly. Exactly. And so if your planet suddenly had two moons, you knew there was a problem. And if one of those moons could blow your planet up, then there is an even bigger problem. Uh, so the rebellion did what it had to. But throughout the whole thing, and one thing that's consistent in the Star Wars movies, at least for me anyway, that always stood out, the original trilogy, not the sequels or the prequels, but at least in the original, you know, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, you can see they were actively, as much as possible, trying to reduce casualties, even among the Empire, before things just had to blow up and go to you know, full on war with armies and soldiers and pew pew blasters and X-wings and TIE fighters. Um, and I think what happened was that the rebellion looked at what happened with the Clone Wars and was like, there's a lot of people dying there. Maybe we shouldn't do that as much anymore. Let's try to minimize damage as much as possible. And I think Luke and Leia inherently understood that. Because how can you inspire people to join your cause if you're out there killing everybody? Like, death should always be a last resort. I think that compassion that Luke and Leia had really led the way with the rebellion. It really served as an example for everybody, and hence you got just compassion in their teaching, surgical strikes to reduce damage, surgical strikes to take out leadership so that the Empire would flounder and people would leave it instead of having to die on the field. Like, compassion, really. I think that was the rebellion's greatest strength. They tried their best, and they educated people about the empire they were with. Excuse me. They taught about the genocide the empire was doing, the planet stripping for materials to construct their TIE fighters and their Death Stars and their Star Destroyers, the prison planets that just turned into misery and pain and hardship for anybody that the Empire didn't like or that sneezed at an officer wrong. Political prisoners are not how to run a system. If anything, dissent should always be encouraged because dissent is what keeps things sharp. And the Empire really didn't like dissent. They really encouraged conformity of thought, of belief, of action. The Empire was fascism. And fascism is a very real thing. And amusingly, also something I talked about last week with Warhammer 40,000, which also examines fascism. And going back to my 40K notes, fascism, it's a form of far-right authoritarian ultra-nationalism characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, and strong regimentation of society and economy. And if you look at the Empire, that's what it is. You had the Emperor at the top, all of his yes, unless you fight for the greater good. But we're not talking 40K. But, it is pretty much always going to be an option in my Twitter poll. So if If you guys want more 40K, don't hesitate to vote when I put up the poll again. Um, yeah, you had the emperor at the top. You had a strong far right government, um, encouraging conformity. The empire was notably xenophobic. They did not like aliens. Um, they did not like anybody who wasn't human because aliens were ew, gross. Uh, and so as a result, like very few aliens ever joined the empire, um, unless they got in the Sith way or something. And that happened. Uh, it was all the empire was about as authoritarian as you got. When the emperor says jump, you say how high. Um, every order followed to a T. Every officer had was monitored for loyalty. Snitching was encouraged. Um, you basically, if you followed all the rules, you were fine. But if you didn't follow rules, that was it for you. You had no hope. And that was why it couldn't be allowed to last. Because if you didn't conform to the empire, you had no freedom, and aliens were constantly and consistently punished for just existing. Different political thought was punished and completely discouraged. You had a society that snitched on each other for personal gain, personal benefit. And they were brainwashed. They were brainwashed to believe that the emperor brought peace. The emperor would solve all the problems. And how would he do that? Well, by strength. Hence, you got the Death Star, which was Tarkin's, run by the Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin and his Tarkin doctrine, which was you inspire through fear, not respect. And if the people are too afraid to act, then you won't have any problems because they're too afraid to act. They'll just keep their heads down, and you get to be in charge and have all that power. And of course, humans need freedom. We need space to be our own people, to do our own thing. And naturally, if the empire tells you you can't, we're gonna have a problem. And then you got the rebellion. And the rebellion was like, yeah, we don't like this anymore. We don't like how you're doing things. We don't like your fascism. It's not very cool. It's not groovy. And your army of stormtroopers is very scary and nasty. They shoot everything that isn't them. They follow orders mindlessly. Yeah, it's very not cool. The thing that gets complicated about the Empire, and one thing I really liked about a lot of the fiction that explored it, was the fact that quite often the Empire did bring peace. Because if you had a planet, say, that was dealing with a pirate problem, that was, or had been invaded by some other alien species that wasn't kind, then the Empire could just sweep in with its stormtroopers and take care of it. And that's how it gained a lot of loyalty. The Empire was like, hey, yeah, we'll take care of that problem. No worries. Just, you're in debt to us now. So we're gonna take all your kids and all your young men of age and women of age and teach them how to be stormtroopers and TIE pilots, and welcome to the Empire. So that's how a lot of fierce loyalty was inspired. Of course, if you have the rebellion sweeping in and going, "Oh, hey guys, you know those stormtroopers that saved your planet? Yeah, they're actually pretty bad. They're going around killing people for not being Empire." Um, I'd imagine you'd get a lot of disagreement, especially if the Empire had ensured a fully functioning world with industry and such. You you might have a problem, and so that as a result, you got characters um like Tarkin, kind of. I think his world had, or no, I might be mixing it up, but in any case, you had some really loyal Imperial characters who weren't necessarily bad people. They didn't they weren't doing it because they hated aliens or anything. They did it because they wanted to bring security and peace to the galaxy. And the rebellion kept mixing things up. It was like, "Hey guys, we're just trying to cool things down a bit." And the rebellion's like, "No. No, you bad. You must be destroyed." And I imagine a lot of the officers must have been confused. Um, the the other thing is that in many of the stories, novels I've read, because I love reading, I'm a voracious reader, and I've read like almost every like old school Star Wars novel out there. Um, you had the officers that eventually noticed that they were doing bad things. Eventually realized that, yeah, this empire I'm in is kind of fascist. They don't treat me and my um, fellow soldiers well. They don't respect us as people, just as tools. They uh, they don't view us as people. They just tell us what to do, and if we don't do it, then they kill us. Which is, yeah, you know, I get that. I get how an army works, but uh, well, it's kind of a funny situation, Flora. Um, because they've brought back and remade canon some of the stuff that was in the old novels, like Grand Admiral Thrawn. His his novels were or novel by Timothy Zahn was super popular. Like everybody loved Grand Admiral Thrawn. And for those not in the know, Grand Admiral Thrawn was one of the rare few aliens that actually made it pretty big in the Empire. Um, he was a blue alien called Chiss from outside of the galaxy, the main galaxy. And his whole premise was that he won wars by studying his opponent's art, the art of the culture his opponents come from. And his theory was that if you knew how an alien culture expressed itself, um, you would know how to defeat them because much comes out in art that doesn't come out any other way. And so Thrawn had to basically fight for every scrap of respect he got in the Empire. He really admired the Empire because they were strong and they were fruitful, and they had armies. And his own alien species really didn't like him. He was a bit of an outcast, so he was like, "Hey guys, can I join your empire? You guys are pretty cool." And so they're like, "You're an alien. What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Here, let me show you." And he joined the Imperial Academy and fought his way up, uh, eventually getting commissioned and everything. And he became a really cool. Yeah, he was really cool. Actually, let me see if I can find him. I should be able to get a picture of him now that he's really popular. Uh, he was very strong, extremely competent, knew what he was doing, Let's see. There we go. Just 1 second. There he is. Oh, big picture. Big picture. But yeah, this is what Thrawn looks like. He, he's blue, he has red eyes, and he's a badass. And he does all sorts of awesome things. Um, he, yeah. He, his style of uniform is different from all the rest because he's a Grand Admiral. Uh, he, um, he fought a lot of decisive victories for the Empire. Oh, whoa, what? No, what happened? There we go. There we go. Okay, my apologies for that. Yeah. Uh, he's also pretty handsome, but yeah, yeah. I went back to my home planet for like 5 seconds, but I'm back. Um, yeah, OBS was weird. Uh, but anyway, yeah. So he's really cool. He's a badass. He's very tactical and clever. He knows how to outwit a foe as much as shoot them in the face with a blaster. Um, oh. Yeah, he was a grand strategist. He wasn't like an edgelord. He uh, he knew how to win. And he knew how to direct his troops, even if they found it weird that that a blue guy was leading them instead of some other dude. But he always proved his worth, and he actually has a little buddy um, that follows him around in the newest Thrawn book because Disney kind of resurrected Thrawn from the EU and and made him a canon character as much as anybody else. He uh, he earned his respect, and so that was a kind of funny segue into my next subject, which is the Empire. But let's talk about the Empire now that I'm here. The Empire, yay! I'm gonna show you another guy that I really like. He's my most favorite background character ever, really. Um, Piet, Admiral Piet. He was a poor guy. He was just doing his best to survive the bureaucracy of the Empire. He was, he had ambition, but only like a healthy respect. He didn't want to like murder people. He wasn't as driven as Grand Admiral Thrawn was. He just wanted to survive. He was a rank and file type dude. He identified more with the average soldier than he did with the leadership. And we saw his tragic end in the movies. Uh, he finally gets up to leading a Death Star, and then an A-wing crashes through and kills him and everybody else. And I just have so much love for him. He was like the best background character. And one of my favorite scenes ever was when Nita fails uh, by sending the by sending all of the Death Star and TIE pilots through the asteroid field to chase our heroes. Um, and so Darth Vader chokes him through the comm link and then promotes Piet there and then. And you can see Piet trying to maintain his composure because he just watched his superior get choked by Darth Vader's mysterious force, and then he's promoted then and there, and it's like, how does an ordinary person, a rank and file officer like that, just So of course he immediately takes up rank and is like orders the men to like drag his former commander away, and Piet's just like, oh yeah, me too. He's just trying to do his job. Like, that doesn't excuse all of the war crimes and stuff that the Empire does, but he's a dude. He's just trying to make his way and survive until he can retire on some planet and become an old man. And yeah, like, of course he wants respect and everything, but he's not like, he's just doing his job. And that's kind of just how mundane and evil the Empire was. It was just, as much as it was the stormtroopers going onto the planets and blasting everyone to pieces, it was also the horrid bureaucracy of having to deal with all these Jedi running around, and of your commander being out of the command ladder. So how do you deal with that as a regular person, just doing your job? Like, it's a tragedy. And I'm sure Piet had his faults. Nobody's perfect, and obviously he's in the Empire, so he's complicit in all of the war crimes, etc. I'm sure he ordered more than a few himself. But yeah, like Alosan said, I felt so bad for him too. How do you, like, did he go and get drunk after his shift was over? Did he read a novel? How did he deal with it? We never know. And it's just, what a scene. Like, what a powerful yet mundane scene. It's like seeing your commander get force choked right in front of your face. It's bizarre, and it would be laughable if it wasn't so horrible. Like, I wouldn't say he's an everyman, because he's not really an everyman. He's an everyman Imperial officer, I guess, to be more specific. Like, how many Imperial officers had like severe PTSD but had to keep going? Like, what did mental health look like in the Empire? How did the Empire treat its officers when they couldn't go on because they needed help? Did Piet go to therapy? Probably. I hope he did anyway. I do get the feeling that, like, there wasn't as much machoism present in the Empire as one might think. I mean, yeah, you had your jocks and the TIE pilots and everything, but the rank and file Imperial officer, the dude, tapping buttons all day, how did they feel? It makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder. And that's why I've always been one to love, like, seeing the rank and file when you have a huge empire like that, or like in any sci-fi or universe. How do the rank and file deal with things? Like, and that's why I've always loved when you get somebody like Thrawn going through the Imperial Academy and in Clone Wars and it would be. I would watch it. We'll never get it because it's not exciting, but I would watch it. And like one of the reasons I really love all of those comedy shows where they do skits about like, the average soldier and stuff, even in the prequels, um, which I'm not too fond of. I get it. People can, like them or dislike them as they will. Uh, but the Nope Troopers, and what I'm referring to, um, yeah, yeah. Um, when the two First Order stormtroopers walk around the corner and see Kylo Ren destroying an office, and they just pause and then look at each other, and then just turn around and silently agree just not to go there, not to talk about it, not to deal with it. Like that's the kind of stuff I live for. Cuz yeah, it's great to see all the heroism and the lightsabers and the pew pew and the explosions and the car chases and all that, or the ship chases as it were, the dog fights. But I also want to see how the average person in said empire deals with it. And I feel like we got a taste of that with Admiral Piet. Like literally just a smidgen. But you just see how he's trying so hard not to look at dead Nita, who just fell down on the floor because Darth Vader choked him, literally right beside Piet. And like the implied threat that if Piet screws up, he'll be next. Um, I just love that. I think that's why he's one of my favorite background characters ever. He was just sort of there, but he played his part, and he showed just how mundanely evil the Empire could be. Because when your leader, yeah, yeah, like that, Kishnam, yeah, exactly. We need more scenes like that. We need more troopers having philosophical discussions like that, like them like deliberately trying to shoot something and missing and blaming it on the blaster, or like the two stormtroopers in Rogue One when Jin and the rebels are sneaking up on them in the forest just before the big assault, and they're talking about the new blasters that are being tested, and it's just like you see that they're guys, they're guys in armor, and and maybe best of all, from A New Hope, when Obi-Wan Kenobi, Old Ben, is sneaking into the power structure of the Death Star, the first Death Star, and there's two stormtroopers just guarding the power switches, and they're just like, when they hear an alarm go off, and one of them looks at the other and is like, "Is there something happening?" Nah, it's probably just a test. Oh yeah, you're right. Let's. All right, let's just keep guarding here then. Nothing to worry about. Like those two have got to be two of my favorite troopers right there, because they're just guys. They're just guys doing their job. They don't know that there's an old Jedi there who used to lead armies. Um, it's like those two grunts, like that is, I imagine, is most of the stormtrooper forces, and it's just really funny to me that we're supposed to see them as you know yeah, well, of course they're not, but that's part of the joke, isn't it? Because the Empire is so arrogant that while they are there guarding, they probably weren't even instructed to really pay attention. It's just like, okay, got another guard shift. Yep. All right, want to go hang out in the cafeteria afterwards. What are those new blasters like? Have you heard about the thing happening on level 8. Like, could you imagine the conversations that stormtroopers have when they're just guarding? And I'd love to see more of that. I'm a big fan of stuff like that. I think it's important. It's important to know as much the view of the guy on the ground as the guy at the top. And I got a bit of a sense of that with oh yes, yes, Alosin. Oh, oh, neat, Keishanum. Very cool. Yeah, and like, I like seeing stuff like that. I like trying to figure out what the grunt at the bottom is thinking when they're ordered to like storm the rebellion fortress or something, or take down an entire army, uh, and you just have to like land on a planet and assault or whatever. And it's just this whole disparate army of people from different planets and different cultures, and you're all wearing the same armor, you're all the same bad guy, you're all ostensibly bringing the Emperor's peace, but not really. Like, how many stormtroopers questioned what they did afterwards? You gotta wonder. The other thing I kind of liked about the ambiguity of the Empire, and one might say they weren't very ambiguous. I mean, yeah, they're a big space force. They have endless stormtroopers and TIE pilots and scientists devising new weapons, and you know, a Tarkin doctrine of peace through fear. Like, but were they really? Like, yeah, I mean, you had the guys at the top giving all the orders, but then you had guys like Admiral Piet, who was just doing his job. Does it excuse him? No. Absolutely not, but what must it be like to have been caught up in that trap? Like, to grow up on an Imperial planet and get all that brainwashing thrown at you so that when the rebellion attacked for ostensibly your freedom as well, how did they deal with it? How did the, like, I'm sure the Imperial Academy had a lot of dropouts. What did all those dropouts think of their former companions? I often wonder. What was daily life like? It's interesting to me. And one could arguably say the Empire was just led by well-intentioned extremists. Like, a desire for peace through power, but peace still. I think it's an interesting thing to examine, because you can get peace through many ways, but might makes right isn't always right. War is not only for those involved. It also involves everybody else not directly involved. You get collateral, you get damage, you get scars, you get lasting effects. Like, if you look at what happened with World War II on our planet, a lot of our medical advancements came from field medicine during World War II. Came through research from World War II. Some of it through some very, very questionable means. For example, how human beings deal with the cold. I would advise you not to really research that too deeply. Yeah. A lot of scientists that the U.S. inherited from World War II Operation Paperclip. Look it up. It was mentioned in X-Files. Um, Stuff like that. Um, so what would what would the science of Star Wars look like? I mean, beyond the exactly. Yeah. Um, eh. Some of them are. Some of them are. Some of them not so much. Oh, I could do a whole thing about the X-Files. Ooh, I'll put that as an option. Then you'd get to hear me angry rant. You don't want to hear me angry rant, probably. Anyway, I'm uh, I'm going off on a direction. Um, yes, I'm a huge X-Files fan, but that's neither here nor there. Um, but yeah, see, like, what would the science in Star Wars look like beyond all of the weapons and the TIE fighters and everything? I mean, yeah, a lot of the science was firmly devoted to that, and I guess if you're the Empire, you're going to want to focus on stuff like that. But what about, like, what did the medicine look like beyond the Bacta tanks? It was a pretty convenient way to heal the characters, but, like, what about field meds? What about mental health meds? What did the Empire think of people with schizophrenia? What did the Empire think of people with depression and anxiety? Were they just told to man up? Did the Empire have counselors? What did the average citizen soldier do when something bad happened? What about betrayal? How did they, yeah, I mean, there's so many different aspects. My mind tends to go off on these tangents because I wonder, like, if this thing happened, then something else must have happened to. Aw, Bun. Bun, Bun, Bun. Hi, Bun. Bun, Bun. Fluffy Bun. I'm sorry. Kishnum has a bunny, and it's a fluffy bunny, so that's what I'm talking about. So, yeah. Like, yes, I love you, Bun. So yeah, how did Admiral Piet grow up? What mental health challenges did he have? How did... Oh, thank you. How did Piet decide that he was firmly for the Empire? How did Piet decide he wanted to progress in rank? What were his parents like? What was his life like? Aw, thank you. I like that. I like being told I'm cozy. What did Piet think of the aliens out there? What did he think of his fellow officers? How did they deal with creating respect among the officers? What did the average stormtrooper think of the average officer? These are all things I want to know. I want to examine and explore things like this. And bounty hunters. What did Piet? I think it was implied through at least one scene where Piet was walking past all the assembled bounty hunters waiting for Darth Vader, and he gave them all a look of like disgust. And I loved that because it showed you a tiny little bit of what an average person would be like. Oh, granted, I mean, maybe not average. If you were on the Death Star, you were the best of the best within the Empire, but still. Did some of the officers like the bounty hunters? Did they think they were cool and maybe, try to emulate them in what they did? How often was lunch break? Yeah, E4 Mafia, yeah. That would be funny. I imagine the bounty hunters thought the Empire was a whole bunch of fuddy-duddies. Look at these fuddy-duddies in their uniforms and their hats with all their uh, rank bars. Like, what losers. Uh, if the average person didn't run in fear from the Empire or the bounty hunters, what kind of person were they? How did the Outer Rim deal with the... yeah. Well, could you imagine a bounty hunter looking at Admiral Piet and being like, what a loser? Meanwhile, poor Piet is just trying not to get shot by one of them because he's just trying to order his soldiers around. Like, and yeah, it's just like, how did, like, we all know the grand story, like how the Emperor took over the Republic and turned it into the Empire, but can you imagine the infrastructure? Like how long it took to mobilize all of the resources to build Death Stars and train an army out of nowhere. Like, yeah, they had what they inherited from the Republic, but you know, like, could you imagine the resources? How did they mobilize at the start? How did they decide what, how to modify the clone trooper armor, how to make it better or worse? And I've seen it argued both ways, that the stormtrooper armor was either better or worse than the clone trooper armor, and that stormtroopers are better or worse than clone troopers. Personally, I'm of the camp that clone troopers were far better than stormtroopers. But apparently, and I did see a good argument for this, that stormtrooper armor was better because even though stormtroopers often fell over, it's argued that they weren't killed. That the armor was built to take the force. Yeah. The armor was built to take the momentum and the force of the shot and disperse it, not necessarily keep it from hitting, but keep the soldier from dying. And it's much better, arguably, that the stormtrooper falls over and lies there injured with a huge bruise on his chest rather than dies. I do still think that the clone troopers had better equipment and better armor, but it is pretty clever if you have waves and waves of disposable men, and you're following the Zap Brannigan strategy of throwing your waves and waves of disposable men at the killbots until they reach their kill limit, then yeah, you want to keep things cheap and efficient to manufacture, but you also want to try to keep as many men alive as you can. Not that they really matter, because they are just tools. They are just there to follow orders. But at the same time, they cost resources. So you want to use as little resources as possible. You want to maintain your logistics flow, which, it's a lot to manage. Like, an army marches on its stomach, but also it marches on morale. It marches on strategy. If your officers aren't doing their job, if you don't have the right NCOs to serve as leadership, your army will not do well, which can be seen in real life right now. Not to get political or anything, but the Russian army is really suffering because I've read a few articles by some retired American generals and soldiers and such who have seen it said that a traditional weakness of the Russian army is its lack of NCOs, or at least well-trained NCOs, or non-commissioned officers, to translate the parlance. Basically, if you don't have on-the-ground leadership, if you don't have some sort of people to instruct your soldiers on how to do their job well, then the soldiers will not do well. They'll suffer in morale. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? Why are we shooting people? We don't have to be here. This doesn't help me personally. This doesn't help my country. Why are we here? So you have, if you lack adequate leadership, if you lack adequate resources, then, you know, your army won't do well. And we don't really know too much about the military structure of the empire. There's been a little bit of clarification. Yeah, let's get a commissar going. But from what I've read, the stormtroopers are the army. There is an Imperial Navy, and I know because I have an Imperial Navy officer costume, both the dress and the flight suit. But that's just maybe me bragging a little bit. I love the helmet. That's why I did it. But the Navy really seems to be more the logistical side of things, and the ships themselves. The Navy doesn't really attack on the planets. The main bulk of the attacking was done by the stormtroopers, as is seen in the movies, which the First Order also seemed to inherit. And it's certainly a way to do things, but without too much detail, it's really hard to tell how the Empire actually functions. Who directs the strategy? What role do the generals play? If they were stormtrooper, they were army. I don't think we really saw, like, the Navy troopers. The costume I'm referring to, by the way, is when Leia, when they're going to rescue Princess Leia from the Death Star, and they go down to the floor her cell's on, and there's the guy wearing a cool, like, samurai type of helmet. He's a Navy trooper. So for reference, if you're watching A New Hope, that's what I'm talking about. The kind of like samurai style helmets. So I don't think we saw them too much actually doing anything other than like guarding things or operating things. I don't think the Navy really did too much boarding. I think it was mostly the stormtroopers. They became like the catch-all for the Empire because they were just so efficient. They were the best troops for every situation. One thing they did in The Mandalorian, which I thought was really interesting personally, was the fact that they brought flame troopers in from the EU, as seen when Moff Gideon is assaulting the Mandalorian's hideout, and that one stormtrooper with red on his armor, he comes up and he just starts flame throwing the building. That type of stormtrooper was originally in the EU, and they came up with all sorts of different stormtroopers. It was kind of like the G.I. Joe effect of like, you got a special soldier for. Yeah, I'd say that's a really good point, Kishanam. That said, they eventually did start sort of branching out stormtroopers in the expanded universe, which is what EU stands for, and my apologies for not explaining that sooner. But yeah, like stormtroopers really weren't as specialized as the clone troopers. You'd get like clone trooper pilots, you'd get clone troopers designed for this, that, or the other thing, whatever specialized service they needed. You had like clone troopers that were specialized for diving underwater, and they had unique armor and like rebreathers and all that. The stormtroopers were just stormtroopers. Like, you might have had an occasional like elite stormtrooper here or there, but they weren't really specialized. Like, even now, if you look at modern armies of many countries, you have like the field troopers, and then you have like the covert ops and such. You don't really have that with the stormtroopers. It's just everybody's a stormtrooper. You're all wearing the same armor. You all look exactly the same, um, which is a powerful argument for conformity. But the Empire's method of just steamrolling everything until it cooperates or is dead. I mean, I guess it has its advantages, but to me, it's not very tactically smart. I mean, I guess if you have endless men to toss at a problem until it's exploded or gone, then it doesn't really matter. It's kind of like the British, what they did with their armies back when they were being all colonial. Um, they basically just steamrolled everything, and I guess the Empire was kind of drawing on a little bit of that for inspiration, as well as, well, we all know that they're based on space, the Nazis, so they're kind of like space Nazis too, hence the fascism. Um, and yeah, it was like there's a lot of steamrolling tactics on display in the Empire because they just didn't really care for their men. Their men were disposable. Um, so I guess that's why you didn't really see too much specialization with the stormtroopers. They were just there to do a job, and who cared if the stormtroopers had trouble doing that job? They were literally trained to step over their fallen companions if they had to get the job done. Um, there was no like loyalty. There was only loyalty to the Empire and to the assignment. There was no loyalty to each other. You were all just there as a tool, and you weren't even really a person. You were a resource to be used and utilized as necessary. And that's part of why I think the Empire was so scary as well. If they had no regard or respect for their own soldiers, then what respect would they have for you, the average citizen? Especially if you disagree with the Empire's way of doing things and their beliefs. Why would, like, and arguably that was kind of the point. If they're just willing to throw all of their stormtroopers at a problem until it's gone, what chance do you have as a citizen who disagrees with how the Empire does things? And so, it would take incredible courage to go against that, as the rebellion did. And the Empire was so firmly entrenched in its beliefs that when there was the chance of defeat, like with the first Death Star, or was it the second one? No, it was the first one with Tarkin. Oh no, it was the second one. Sorry, over the planet of Endor. And you had some of his officers trying to convince Tarkin to leave the Death Star just in case something bad happens, and Grand Moff Tarkin scoffs at that and is like, leave now, just when we're at our greatest moment of success, i.e. having tricked the rebellion into thinking the second Death Star wasn't operational, and seeing their assault on the ground fail. They didn't anticipate that anybody could actually defeat them. Like what happened with the first Death Star was just a fluke. It had to be a fluke, right? Like, come on, like, we're the Empire. Who are these doofuses with X-Wings and talking about rebellion and with 12-year-olds with glow swords? What do they know? And if you're that confident, then yeah, why would you care? And of course you'd be cocky enough to try it again, because that's what the Empire does. You're bringing the Empire's peace, whether you like it or whether your citizens like it or not. Of course it wouldn't happen a second time. I mean, yeah, the first time was a fluke. Maybe there was a manufacturing defect or something. And Yeah, no, they were just too cocky. They got too comfortable on their own laurels, and as a result, they lost the second Death Star too, because that pesky rebellion just wouldn't go away. They kept shooting at them and shooting at them, and yeah, uh, I don't know if I'd necessarily feel sorry for the stormtroopers. I mean, they were still the ones committing the war crimes, shooting people or and all that. Like, um, maybe like if you saw a stormtrooper like Finn, like sympathy should only go so far. I think. Yes, you might be confused. Yeah, on an existential level, yeah. Like if they're still pulling the trigger, despite the fact that they might even have the remotest sense that the thing they're doing is wrong. Yeah, I agree. Finn was great. He was one of the he had potential as a character, and they definitely did him dirty. Um, but yeah, how many Finns were in the Empire, but they were just too scared to fight back, so they just did what they had to, and became war criminals because of it. Like, where does the sympathy exist? Can someone really be redeemed? And like some of the main heroes of the original rebellion were Imperial Academy dropouts. Um, I know I believe Wedge Antilles was one, uh, which I think they actually expanded on by having Sabine Wren convince him to drop out in one of the cartoons. I think, what was it, Rebels? I think it was Rebels. Um, and they had it. It was actually Sabine who convinced him, so that was great. And then he became a hero. Um, but the point was he dropped out before he graduated. Um, I think there was somebody else, another major rebellion hero who dropped out of. Oh no, who was an officer. Sorry, he'd already graduated and become an officer, but he defected because he couldn't handle it anymore. And like those rare few examples that are actually illuminated on within the universe. It's neat to see that because you get a viewpoint into the imperial mindset from somebody who figured out that what they were doing was wrong. Well, if that school is the Imperial Academy and is teaching you to genocide people, I I'd maybe want to drop out of that school too. I mean, if you catch on to the fact that, you know, you're never allowed to uh you're never given the freedom to question an order. You're never given the freedom to talk in confidence with an officer. You're never given the freedom to examine why you're doing something. Like, in that sense, and if, you know, you'd hope that there'd be some other kind of civilian type school available and not just the military one. But then again, apologies. Um, then again, if you're a poor person from a poor planet and the academy is there offering a chance to become a TIE pilot, and it's your only escape from poverty, then where does the responsibility lie? It's a tough call. There's a lot at play. What's the right move? Who's and you know what average Imperial soldier that never fired a blaster but was still complicit in doing many things? Uh, who to blame for all of those war crimes outside of just the one ordering it, which of course they should take full responsibility. But how do you forgive? How do you move on? It's definitely something to think about. And these are the kinds of questions that Star Wars brings up in my head. Like, what was life like when you were just yourself, but in the Empire, in the rebellion, when you were hoping that war didn't come find you, and when it did, what horrible decision would you have to make? It's a lot to ponder. And sometimes I just think about these things. I do. I'll just sit and I'll ponder. Sometimes not for long, but when I'm watching, I wonder how many Finns are running around questioning what they're doing. How many of them shot somebody and then realized what a crime they committed. Oh no. I'm sorry, Flora. I certainly didn't intend to cause that. But you know, these are important things to consider. What is the media that you're consuming making you think about? What questions come up while you're watching your favorite hero cause an explosion or do a car chase or debate the morals behind their actions? I believe in examination of what you consume. I believe that you should really